moving to part three of our interview and thinking about the future and systematic change. It's a very broad and big question, but maybe we can try and narrow it down. What do you think is broken, and what do you think that we need to do? What would be some of the solutions to correct or make better?
I think what's broken is a lack of communication between different sectors and business and civil society, each of whom has an influence on government, not uniting and agreeing what they should encourage government to do. A government will refrain from making changes if they think it affects consumers who they see as being represented by civil society organizations. But they also know that if they do certain things, they get a standard complaint from businesses that, oh, if you do that, we'll not be competitive and not be able to carry out our business, and we'll lose out to other countries. So government is steering between two rocks, as it were, the wrath of the consumer and the complaints of business. And I think what we need to do is to get together as businesses, labor organizations, civil society organizations, and come up on any policy subject with a policy answer, rather than each sticking to our own separate opinion. So if you listen to the morning news on minimum wage or something, you will get a view from civil society, a view from business, and not a united view. And the government is left to sort it out. We need mechanisms, and the one that exists, of course, is the United Nations Global Compact, which was set up with, built into its governance structure, civil society organizations, labor organizations, and businesses. So it's business run, but with these two in the governance structure, and with representatives of human rights NGOs, anti-corruption NGOs, and so on. So the model exists, thanks, I think, to the late Kofi Annan, but I have to admit that it has not been extremely successful in its distribution. If you talk to people about the United Nations Global Compact, many of them have no idea what you're talking about, which is a great pity and is a failure of business and of the organization itself, because it's been strongly supported by successive secretaries general and has had some very able chief executives of the organization. So it's done some good work, but it's a relatively quiet voice. So that would be a recommendation, is collaboration, genuine collaboration, seeking, what if we'll take something like a minimum wage, to try and arrive at an united position from those who say, of course, we need to raise it, and those who say, well, wait a minute, if you raise it too much, we're going to increase costs and have all sorts of unintended consequences, like the impact on youth employment, for example, which is one which seems to have been completely missed in the discussion.
Yeah, it's interesting. Back to the Quaker, I've been involved in local Quaker meeting house for almost 2 years now, 20 months, something like that, 22 months, I don't remember. And that's one of the things that I have learned, really, is that listening and that trying to find a way forward. And I also find it interesting that, yeah, of course, some subjects can be very heated. People have got very strong opinions. And what I find really interesting is that until there's a place that the meeting house can move forward, a decision isn't made. That can be very painful because, if you want to get something done, but that kind of ties back to what you were saying. Yes, you can get things done, but actually you're not taking everybody with you and you're causing damage as well. So everybody kind of suffers in the end if you don't work together to get solutions.
Absolutely.
And lastly, I'm just thinking then about people, and we can say young people, but we don't have to be young to enter into business. The data I've looked at is actually most people enter in. Well, if we redefine business, of course, you can be a business at any point in your life. But in terms of starting business, that generally tends to be people in their 40s and 50s, where they've built an expertise, etc. So it gets a bit muddy when we try to define what business is. But if we try and think about the role, the advice for young people, and then later we can move to what advice would you give to the older business person, whatever age that might be, because we're all in a place, I believe, that we're all learning, as I've already pointed out with my experience in the local meeting, and that has an impact on I hope, on my business, or the behavior of myself within business. So what advice would you give to young people explicitly in terms of what you garnered over the years, in being able to make a difference?
Well, I find that it's extremely encouraging that young people, many of them in my experience, are looking to see how they can make a difference. I've had many connections with highly intelligent young people who've gone into the financial business, as it were, and they derive virtually no satisfaction. They're extremely frustrated because they feel they're working very hard. They're extremely well paid, but they're not actually, in their terms, really making a difference. And they very often say, well, we'd like to, how can we get a job involving sustainable development or I say to them, I think the advice that I would give is try and find a job, whatever job, in manufacturing or finance or wherever, where you're part of the organization and you try and make a difference from within the organization. So use your, try and apply the principles of sustainable development to that job, and don't be distressed by the fact that the job title may not include anything about sustainable development. The question is, are you actually increasing the sustainability, the environmental and social sustainability of the organization? So it's kind of change from within. And that can start, I think, at a modest level within an organization. I think change is well possible. If you're in an organization where you feel that, you've been battering your head against a brick wall and achieving no change at all, then I think the time indeed has come to reconsider your position and go and try and find someone perhaps in that industry or a related industry which has a different approach or a more flexible approach.
Yeah, I hear that. And whilst you were speaking, I was like thinking when you were saying the job title may not have sustainability or other phrase, and I was like thinking I've never come across a job that says I don't know, director of sales with integrity, because and so yeah, to kind of point the obvious out here is that it's our responsibility as individuals to act with integrity, and of course we can have communities, such as Quakers or any other group that can help us to act with integrity, and it's a part of our life. It's not a job title. It's what we are in whatever we're doing, whether we're the sales director or the chair of Shell or whatever, or running the local takeaway or whatever, or even working there as the chef. It's our choice to have integrity, and I like what you say that if we feel that we can't act with integrity because the organization puts blocks in the way and tells us to do something different, then the choice we have is that we can move somewhere else. And of course, that, in my experience, can be very, very difficult because, of course, you may find yourself without a job and without any money. But life's short, isn't it? And you have to decide what your values and where your red lines are, I guess, in the sand.
No, I must say, I often say one of the reasons I stayed working for Shell throughout, all my career was that at any point in that, I felt that you could say, I'm not entirely comfortable about this. I worry a bit, are we really doing the right thing? And the reaction was always to say, okay, let's talk about it and see what is it, is there something that we could do, that we could change, which would make you feel less uncomfortable. And I think that's very important, a sort of openness to discussion and to examine what it is. Could be the property of something you're selling or the impact of something you're selling and so on.
Yeah, thank you. I think we've covered the young, and within that, we've also, I believe, covered a great deal about people who maybe go into business and in later in life, as in they're not employed in business. Maybe they start a company, in their 40s and 50s, as I said earlier, is this sort of general age where we often think that. Companies started by 22-year-olds like Mark Zuckerberg or something. That's actually the very rare. Most companies are started by people in their 40s and 50s. But if you've got anything to sort of say to those people?
No, well, it's not really been, my path.
Yes.
Sometimes, I often say that I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not someone who has kind of gambled everything or put everything to create something.
Yes.
I've always been more of an administrator, basically.
Yes.
Trying to make sure that things run smoothly, that relations between people are fair and just. So I think different people have different capacity to advise.
I perfectly understand that, and I think you have said it, in at the same time, because you said it's about, it is about their integrity and being fair, etc. And I think a lot of people that would go into business want to do that, and that ties back to support networks and the like, to be able to have time to reflect with other people, because it can be very lonely for people that are in business. They can feel maybe lonely, particularly in small businesses. But anyhow, have you got anything before we kind of close? Is there anything that you would like to share with us that maybe is sort of been in the back of your mind as we've been talking and thinking, oh, I'd like to be able to get that in or this in? Is there anything that's...
No, I don't think so. Nothing. Well, the only thing I would add is we are, as you know, revising the book on Quaker business, Good Business, and to me, we need to be aware of the fact that many Quakers or people who attend Quaker meetings or find themselves attracted to Quaker principles, they are working in non-Quaker organizations. So the question is how one can gently introduce some of the principles. And I think the team leader idea of an executive committee or of a board is one of those things. One can build on the kind of structure and how members of the team relate to each other. And it's certainly worth reminding people from time to time, including those involved in Quaker meetings, that really it's not a good idea to speak loudly and often.
Yeah, that's I agree. It's a lifelong journey, isn't it? Or it's a lifelong relearning, in effect, because we can easily default into other ways of behaving, and I think that's so it's an ongoing process.
Yes. Good. Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Much
you.
appreciated your time, and as I said at the beginning, in the first interview, that there's a book, your book. I know you wouldn't want me to push it, which you wrote some years ago, but for people that are interested to learn a bit more about your career and your personal life, there's some fascinating stuff there. And I also pointed out to people that they can Google you and watch some videos if they're interested in learning a bit more about your thinking and experiences and etc. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.